The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Bryce Wiener from BlockTech,
How you doing?
Christoph Atlas from Anonymous Bitcoin Book,
Hey, everybody.
Will Pangman from Topeki,
Howdy.
Victoria Van Eyck from Bitcoin Strategy Group.
Hello.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from Mad Bitcoins. Here today's top story. Issue 1, Satoshi Nakamoto's email hacked. At first we thought his account might have just expired, but when the hacker started forwarding old Satoshi messages to members of the Bitcoin community, we knew that the worst was true. The hackers have also released screen caps of Satoshi's inbox, and boy does he have a lot of spam. They also released a bill for an FPGA that was delivered to St. Louis. We're all hoping that it was a dead drop or Satoshi has since moved on. They say the hacker is in negotiation with Satoshi to keep it all private, which doesn't sound good. Bryce Wiener, your thoughts?
You know, when all this came out with Newsweek, the community of Bitcoin users had basically said, you know what, it doesn't matter who Satoshi is because it's mathematics and we can all read the code. We know there's nothing hidden in there. So really, the identity of Satoshi Nakamoto is really like a pop culture curiosity. And, you know, these people could have simply thrown it out there, what Satoshi's identity is. And they didn't. You know, a lot of that stuff was blacked out, although his name did leak. So, you know, are they trying to blackmail him? Are they trying to help him out by trying to cover his trail? That's really kind of up in the air right now. I'm not really sure what where this is going to play out yet.
Well, remember, the main media fascination with Satoshi isn't so much the creator, it's those unknown Bitcoins. All the early Bitcoins that are mined, and the media is just, you know, biting at their teeth. They're ready to find out what happened to those. So I think that's a lot of the mystery there, too. Christoph Atlas.
I think this is an unfortunate development, but if there's some script kiddie that can hack into the email account, we can kind of assume that various three-letter agencies have also tapped into the account in the past because they're certainly more capable and have quite a bit more incentive to do so. It's important to keep in mind that anything that gets posted as a screen capture, an apparent script capture, can just be a Photoshop job. So we don't know whether any of these emails that they're posting online are actually verified, but we do know that they have accessed the account. That's obvious. For me, the fear is, you know, not really that it's going to have some kind of hugely negative impact on Bitcoin, because at this point Satoshi is quite irrelevant. He's not contributing to the code. He's not directing things behind the scenes. And even if he were coerced into whatever, you know, kind of negative thing that people would want to plot up for Bitcoin, it just wouldn't get very much traction because he's just a guy at this point. But I do think that he has made it very clear to the world that he prefers not to be known. And this hacker is certainly playing with fire because he could be unintentionally giving away this person's or group of people's identity, and that could have deadly consequences for that individual, and that's scary to think about. So I really hope that nothing comes of this, and if we continue to hear from Satoshi in the future, keep in mind the way that we identify Satoshi is not through his email address or him posting things online under his pseudonym or anything like that. He's got a PGP key. He's got the private keys to his Bitcoin addresses, which he can sign messages with, and that is the cryptographer's way of identifying yourself to the internet, not these, you know, these basically ephemeral pseudonyms that we use in the form of email addresses.
That's a good point, Christoph, that any of the agencies could have hacked or even just visited this free email supplier that Satoshi was using and easily gotten this information. So one would hope that Satoshi was playing it clean with this account and didn't have anything in there.
It makes me think as well that I wonder if that message a little while ago, earlier in the year, saying that I am not Dorian Satoshi Nakamoto. Um, it makes me think that it may not have been Satoshi himself who posted that. It wasn't cryptographically signed. And if I'm Satoshi, I'm keeping in mind that when I first launch Bitcoin, I'm not on anyone's radar, right? So I can be sending emails around and whatever and using these little, like web-based email clients and all that stuff. But as soon as I get on the target list for these three-letter agencies, there's no way that I'm touching those email accounts ever again, basically, because it's so easy for the NSA or GCHQ or whoever to set up these little traps all over the internet, just waiting for someone to interact with that email address. In fact, it's probably very likely that the NSA knows exactly who the hacker is that accessed his email account, because they probably triggered all manner of malicious JavaScript and stuff injected into his machine and all this crap, right? So if we really wanted to know who the hacker is, I guess they can claim Roger Ver's bounty. But if I'm Satoshi, seriously, like, that is a way of touching the internet in a way that's just like there's going to be a million bear traps sitting around that email account. I just wouldn't touch them. Again, at this point, I would find other ways to post my messages that I felt more confident about.
It didn't make a lot of sense at the time when Satoshi came out to defend Dorian. It was a really nice thing to do, but it wasn't entirely necessary. And from a spycraft perspective, coming back out after you'd already disappeared is such a big mistake. It only seems to happen in movies, and this isn't a movie. Will Pangman.
Yeah, I think that was very well put by both Bryce and Christoph. I don't have much to add there. I just think if Satoshi can remain anonymous, as he clearly wishes, that would be a feat for all time. So perhaps it's a ticking clock for the reasons that were mentioned. Perhaps he's able to achieve this feat. That would be very, very cool. I think that would lend a lot to the possibility that through incredible diligence and discipline, you can achieve relative anonymity on the open, broken web. That would be very neat as we begin to repair the web with this new technology, as Bryce is up to. So that's my thought. I think it's an incredible feat. I'm rooting for him.
It's like The Usual Suspects. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was making the world believe he didn't exist. Victoria.
Yeah, so back to the Newsweek point from before. I really didn't like this. I don't like this either. We should be talking about ideas first, not people. This man wants to stay private. It doesn't matter who he is. He's given us this gift, and I don't like this at all, So I wrote an article of 3 pages in Bitcoin Magazine about this, so you can read that to get all my thoughts, but I'm not pleased with this. So
he does have all those Bitcoins, though. There's no way the media can stop paying attention to someone who theoretically has access to all those Bitcoins. I'm hoping he didn't save them. That's my prediction. And that's also going to freak people out when they find out that he didn't save them. But
I have it on good authority that the private keys are burned.
I was going to mention this too. Yeah.
Burned, like unavailable?
Like he got rid of them.
Yeah. That's what I think. That's the smartest thing to do. It helps the currency, and whoever, they didn't know it was going to be this valuable. It went all crazy. So, Bryce?
Just to respond a little bit to some of the other comments, in 1996, the NSA, in conjunction with MIT, posted a white paper which essentially outlined how Bitcoin operates. And the real difference between that white paper and what we have come to know as Bitcoin is the introduction of decentralization. And that's really the only major difference. A couple minor differences, but nothing really major. So, I have long suspected that this is not something that came out of somebody's garage. That the blockchain itself is a construction of advanced cryptographic techniques, of which there are a few people in the world who are greater experts than the NSA. So I have a strong suspicion that we're using that toy that was created by all those people we're supposed to hate. Now, of course, the fun thing is that it is just math, and it's open source, and we can employ it however we want. But that three-letter agency argument, I think, needs more support. If there's one thing that we know is true, it's that we know there are nudge teams, and we know that our media has been manipulated for pretty much the majority of the 21st century at the very least. So when there's the public perception that the NSA or the CIA is behind everything, that's almost like Deus Ex Machina these days. And I would like a little more evidence than God in the machine to say that this is something nefarious or something other than just a bunch of kids who managed to get into his account.
We haven't talked about this on the show before, as far as I remember, but this idea that Bitcoin was invented by the NSA or some other aspect of the government, it's hard for me to believe that there would be someone working for the government who would have the ingenuity to come up with Bitcoin that would be so completely, and not only just the technical understanding, but the economic understanding behind Bitcoin as well, that would have such poor foresight to understand what effect Bitcoin is going to have on their future job. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever that you would have this team of NSA people that are like, yeah, let's come up with an invention that's going to remove the device that allows us to be employed by the U.S. government. It just that idea kind of baffles me when people say that it's NSA coin and SHA-256 and blah blah blah. It doesn't seem plausible to me, and I think that Bitcoin would look quite different if it was invented by some aspect of the government and put out there into the population.
Well, remember, Christoph, that the internet was also created by the government, and I don't think they necessarily.
No, it was absolutely not created by the government. There were the ARPANET/DARPANET. This was like a prototype that the government came up with their researchers. It never would have gone anywhere if you left that up to the government. It would have stayed a pathetic little
I think it would have continued to serve
in someone's laboratory somewhere. What allowed the internet to become
and sent their information back and forth. I think the military would have their own internet any way you shake it, and now they can just use the actual internet.
It would be extremely expensive for them to try and do that on their own. But no, I mean the internet today is a hold on. The internet is the creation of the free market, and private companies actually taking this idea that of ARPANET and turning it into something useful that's useful to a variety of consumers and businesses and et cetera. The idea that that's kind of like this NASA space launch kind of model of the government inventing really useful things completely on its own and going to the moon and stuff like that. I think that the moon landing is about the only example that we can come up with, and that was at a time when they had just relatively recently created NASA, so they had a lot of scientists that were coming out of the free market that were still had this private market mindset, whereas now NASA has accomplished very little in the decade since because it's such a firmly government institution, and that's exactly what the military is. The military has been around for decades. The NSA has been around for decades, and I don't think they're capable of coming up with something like Bitcoin. And I don't think that if they were, they would want to put themselves out of work.
So let me interject. I recently reread the MIT paper that Bryce referred to. Just to bring it back to Satoshi for a second. In looking through the history of the cypherpunk movement and then reading these old papers that come from high-level institutions and government, academia and government working together, what you see is two tracks, and I think this is the same sort of activity that's going on in the two examples or analogies that you gave, Christoph, the internet and let's say NASA, for example. But there's two tracks. There's the private ingenuity that you were referring to, and then there's also the watchers per se who are keeping an eye on all of this private ingenuity and they're involved too. There was definitely an interplay between the NSA and MIT and institutional computer scientists throughout the 80s and 90s, and the cypherpunks as well. They were like kind of competing and kind of piggybacking off of each other's innovations. The cypherpunks had a clear ideology, that we're all familiar with and understand, and then the state is using it for its political and economic opportunity advantages. That's clear too. But that's kind of what's going on. So to Bryce's point, certainly that paper talks about all kinds of things that look very familiar to Bitcoin. But along with the one thing Bryce mentioned that it doesn't include, the other thing it doesn't include a talk of is the blockchain at all. It doesn't include that concept. Now, maybe that's certainly an earlier concept. The 96, I think that paper came out. It's probably written 94 and 95. And look, that's huge. I mean, that is the thing that I think Christoph's referring to, which is this really dangerous thing for the powers that shouldn't be, for example. And that is an incontrovertible history timeline that gets stronger the older it gets. The longer ago things happen, the more incontrovertibly provable they are. And
well, okay. At this point, I need to interrupt because for 60 years, since the 50s and post World War II and the Korean War, we've had folks like the John Birch Society and et al. That entire group. That and if you want to talk conspiracy theorists, these are the people who have been, they invented conspiracy theory, quite frankly, and they have been warning of a one world currency for decades. A global currency that will level the playing field and make all, and people, libertarians and conservatives have railed against that in American society for decades. Now, along comes Bitcoin, which is inserted into the public consciousness through a grassroots open source effort. It's my dog. Through a grassroots open source effort, and everybody accepts it at face value because, oh boy, now we're in control. However, the question asked is, maybe the perceptions of what's been going on inside these three-letter agencies all this time isn't exactly accurate. Maybe the confirmation bias that has gone on in regard to one world currencies, maybe it's all just backwards. Maybe we just simply got it wrong. And seeing how Bitcoin has come into proliferation and what it has done, and we know that the roots of this exist within the government, just like DARPA did. I'd be really hard pressed for a major technological advancement in the last time for someone to produce a major technological advancement in the past 100 years that didn't originate from military spending, from the transistor at Bell Labs to DARPA at the internet to Wi-Fi to all of that.
These are good examples, and I think what comes out of this is you have people who leave the posts where they received grants, let's say from the state, to create these things for a state program. They leave these posts, they enter private enterprise, and they experience like not being owned, and they want to create. They have great brain power, and so they start creating in the free market. Are they tainted forever because of their previous? Are they tainted?
And then you have In-Q-Tel on the other side, which we know, which everybody knows is a CIA incubator for technology on the internet. So what sort of emerges is a picture of intelligence services potentially at war with each other, where on one half you have this group which has given these technologies and released them into the public, and another group which is actively seeking to control the effects and consequences of what the other side did.
My
last comment to that would just be, I kind of hope that there is that dissent going on within. That's my hope.
It's only us from the outside that see them as a monolithic agency. They're clearly different agencies. They can't be as well coordinated as we just imagine they are. So I think that's a really good point by Bryce. Christoph?
The thing they all have in common is that they all get paid by the US dollar. None of these agencies at their current size are possible without the US dollar, without this petrodollar. They can't exist if we have a world that's run on Bitcoin, the NSA looks like a shadow of its current self. That's an economic reality, and so I don't understand the idea that Bitcoin is NSA coin. Sure, maybe they wrote some white papers and stuff that were relevant to the technology. Maybe Satoshi read their white paper and improved upon it. That all seems plausible. Yes, there are scientists that do useful stuff that happen to work for the government, but ultimately these things, when they become useful to the market, that is an action that is created by the market itself and is divorced from this kind of research. And keep in mind, the majority of the research that is being performed and being paid by the government is complete circle jerk waste of time nonsense. I mean, people studying the mating habits of butterflies and writing poetry and just all kinds of
that's how that 96 MIT NSA paper reads. If you understand Bitcoin, if you're Bitcoin literate and you read this paper, it reads that way. And it's funny that you make that comparison, Christoph, because that's how it's the voice, the writing voice. It's really obvious.
All right, moving on. Exit question. Given that we could still authenticate messages from Satoshi if they were signed with his PGP key, will we hear from Satoshi Nakamoto again? Bryce.
Well, Christoph brought up a great point. But, that I am not Dorian Nakamoto statement is now suddenly suspect. However, I actually looked at the P2P Foundation page, and the original post by Satoshi on Bitcoin does not have his PGP key in it. So he didn't even sign his original message on P2P forums. So, unless and until we get that cryptographic evidence that the individual, that anyone at all, you can't prove a negative. So there's no way to say that the keys have been destroyed. We must always assume that those keys still exist, in perpetuity. That being said, until there is some signing of his identity to prove that he is, connected to the historical entity that is known as Satoshi Nakamoto, it's just out there in the wind.
And with the lack of signing and the leaving this email account open, not deleting this email, we're seeing many signs of the alleged Dread Pirate Roberts, where we expect them to do everything right, but it's so hard to do everything right. Everyone slips up somewhere, maybe even Satoshi.
And gosh, wouldn't it be terrible if our heroes turned out to be just human beings like the rest of us?
It would be. I'd prefer if they're hyper-intelligent space aliens sent to save us. Christoph Atlas.
We could hear from Satoshi. If I put myself in his place or their place or her place, it would be difficult to just create this thing, see it blow up like crazy and turn into something that clearly exceeded Satoshi's expectations in terms of how fast things were going to move. It would be very difficult to resist the temptation to comment on that and keep it to yourself. But on the other hand, I think that he's demonstrated some real wisdom by playing his, keeping his cards close to his chest, so to speak, and trying to stay on the down low, because I do think he would get a lot of really negative attention by outing himself, and so it's possible, but I'd like to think that he'll just walk away from it and move on to other stuff.
I've often think that it reminds me of the Prometheus story, where Prometheus was chained to a rock after giving mankind fire. Except in this situation, they haven't been able to find Prometheus to chain him to a rock yet. So it's going really good this time. Will Pangman.
Yeah, I think the rock is his forced solitude, self-enforced kind of, self-imposed, but that's kind of the rock he's chained to. That's a good analogy. Yeah, like I indicated earlier, I'm really rooting for someone to show that with incredible diligence and discipline, you can achieve relative anonymity on the open broken web. So, like, if he can stay private and maybe only, communicate one more time with us from a machine that connects to, internet by satellite, and he throws the hardware overboard after that, and rides off into the sunset. That'd be cool. And we never hear from him again. We get a nice final message. This is, the point was brought up about Dread Pirate Roberts, and eventually even these visionary creators slipping up, hopefully not with Satoshi.
Well, and that's a really great point. We don't know how important anonymity was to Satoshi. It's assumed in the actions that were taken, just dropping off the face of the planet. But a lot of the mythos and assumptions behind the Satoshi's motivations, we really don't know what those were. And leaving this email account open, was it carelessness, or did we just place a lot more on Satoshi's need for privacy than initially assumed? That kind of stuff is really just up in the air, and until the guy comes forward, it's fun to think about, but I don't know how much of it can really be proven as true.
It does seem like the bigger Bitcoin gets, the more reason there is for Satoshi to stay private. So maybe at the beginning he didn't think that much about it, but now it's obviously a big issue. Victoria?
Will we hear from him again? We'll definitely keep hearing about him all the time, which isn't bad because it keeps Bitcoin in the news, and every time Bitcoin is mentioned, it's awesome. So I hope we hear from him. I don't know. Or her.
If we don't, the media is going to be awful bored.
Yeah.
Issue 2. Apple Pay takes credit cards to a whole nother level. Apple Computer has done it again. As they revolutionized the music industry with iTunes, they're now seeking to revolutionize the credit card industry with Apple Pay. Apple Pay tokenizes the credit cards and makes them more secure. But they've also started an advertising campaign to kill off the old plastic cards. Is the enemy of my enemy my friend? Christoph Atlas.
Yeah, it's interesting. So as we develop this like financial tech some more on the internet, what we're seeing is there's like a whole stack of you can think of them as protocols. We've had this concept in networking for a long time. And I think that Apple Pay and Bitcoin are totally two different parts of the stack, right? If Apple wants to in the future, they can integrate Bitcoin into Apple Pay. I don't think it competes with it. The other day, someone asked me, like, do you think that Apple Pay is the Bitcoin killer? And I said, well, do you think that credit cards are the yen killer? I don't think so, because they're two different parts of the stack, right? So, I think that I would not be surprised whatsoever if Apple Pay integrates Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency in the future. But keep in mind that things like Apple Pay, PayPal, they're all middlemen, and they're things that the decentralized finance community is working to eliminate, and that I think that the market tends to naturally try to eliminate in the long run, to get rid of these fees and these wallet holders and so forth. And so in the long term, I think that there is a bit of competition there, but it's more in terms of Bitcoin is a threat to Apple Pay and not so much the other way around.
Will Pangman.
Sorry about that. So, yeah, I think token cards, Apple is saying that this is something new. This is over a decade old. This happens. This is how lots of card payments happen. This is how Uber, for example, has charged people for over a year, And it's interesting, about the card killing agenda. Like Christoph said, there are two different parts of the stack: Bitcoin or dollars, and the cards, or whatever it may be. It's funny, you see these gimmicks come out. Apple Pay has some cool elements. I'll separate that for a second. But gimmicks like Coin, this card that combines all your cards and connects to an app. I mean, people think this is cool. This is just it solves a real problem of having a lot of cards in your pocket. I mean, half the population, or probably the majority of the retail shopping population, is women, and they have purses. They don't care about too many cards. Okay? I mean, this is not a real problem, people. Okay? So, it's a cool, sharper image on steroids kind of thing. Whatever. It's like Sky Mall on steroids. This coin.
That was exactly what that Sky Mall was exactly what I was
Yeah. And Apple Pay, in some respects, is kind of doing this too. I mean, there are a couple things, like Wi-Fi calling they've been advertising. That's weak sauce, There's a couple things that are weak about it, but yeah, if they can do touchless payments, I mean, I read an article they're working with Braintree of PayPal and also another payments company, but basically two companies who've been linked to Bitcoin. Apple's working with to achieve this one-touch payments type of interfacing. I mean, who knows? Maybe they're starting to realize that cross-platform extensibility is a good thing again, and maybe they're going to open up to that more. So I'm encouraged, but yeah, card killing's not the issue. They're trumpeting innovations that aren't real, so their marketing is like really playing on the dumb, which is unfortunate. So we'll see. We'll see how people take to this. NFC is another thing. Like NFC has been around for a long time. Android's used it for a long time. It's never really caught on. But maybe this could be NFC's killer app kind of thing, just like QR codes have been. The killer app for QR codes so far has been Bitcoin addresses. I mean, there's not a really better use case that has been used en masse. So anyway, we'll see how it catches on. But I'm more excited about the Braintree, PayPal, Bitcoin news by far.
That's a good point, Will. What if Apple comes out with Apple Pay for Android? That sounds clever. Victoria, your thoughts?
Well, I love this. I just think this is really exciting because it gets people used to the idea of money on your phone. And I don't know why we're not doing this already. I mean, I guess we're doing it now, but just the fact, when I go to Starbucks, all I bring is my phone, and I want to do that everywhere. And it gets people talking about Bitcoin again because they ask, whoa, is Apple Pay going to kill Bitcoin? Well, now you're talking about Bitcoin again. I just love it. Yeah, I'm excited.
Bryce?
I have a couple thoughts on this. Number one, Apple with, I think this is a great, Apple Pay is an excellent entry point for crypto into the Apple ecosystem. And the reason for this is, of course, the Touch ID. You can, through the API, you can actually generate private keys based on your fingerprints. So your Apple phone, your iOS wallet, is you. I mean, biometrically attached to you. That sort of technology doesn't exist. NFC, I agree with Will. I think Apple was probably the last holdout for this mass acceptance of the technology. You see the gas stations, you can pay at the pump with NFC, you can pay with your groceries at NFC, and I think Apple being one of the largest, most visible, most market maker of mobile device manufacturers adopting it, it's a done deal. We're going to see NFC everywhere in the next 6 months.
Absolutely, Bryce. Apple's doing a lot to get companies to adopt that. They're rolling it out with several large corporations to make sure that it's there when you want to use it.
And this is also Apple not leading for a change, because NFC has been established by all of these other players like Samsung, which is like a dirty word around Apple. So now Apple has to conform to whatever standards have already been set by their competitors. So there's not much opportunity for that walled garden that Apple is so comfortable with what's instituting with all their systems. All that being said, I have a criticism of the Bitcoin community and of the developers in general in regard to Apple Pay and some of the mobile, the focus on mobile. Mobile doesn't help people that can't afford phones. Mobile doesn't help people that, we all got Obama phones and all that. What I would really like to see is more focus and development on non-electronic means of accessing the blockchain and transferring funds. There's some genuine opportunities for ingenuity and genius to come forth and really provide services to the unbanked that are completely withheld from them by technological barriers. If you want to talk about the 6.5 billion, Bitcoin cannot help people that do not have access to electricity and internet, not without a significant upfront cost. And Apple Pay is great, and the adoption and the moving of crypto to mobile is fantastic, but at that point it's still just a 1%er's toy. And once we get off of smartphones and once we get off of the addiction to the internet for the use of crypto, and it's tough, don't get me wrong, and it's not easy, that's why nobody's done it yet, but it is possible. And I'd like to see more investment in that area.
That's an excellent point, Bryce. One more thing. As all English majors know, the apple represents man's fall from grace, the poisoned apple in Snow White and forbidden knowledge. Do you think that the credit card industry knows that they've made a Faustian bargain? What will they do when Apple Pay accepts Bitcoin? Christoph.
I don't know, but I mean, I think that the credit card companies they'll be fine. They'll find ways to, continue acting as these ugly little middlemen that collect fees and annoy us all. But I do think this does impact two other really important industries. It's bad news for apparel because people won't be handing over their credit cards and IDs any longer, and touchless payment, and it's also, it's going to impact all kinds of stuff like that, and I think that the ramifications will be pretty interesting when we see it all come to close.
Yeah, wallet manufacturers won't have slots for your credit cards anymore. What will they have? I mean, what would you do? Just stuff business cards in there?
Good for the companies that make screens too, because more people taking their phone out of their wallet, dropping it, and breaking the screen.
And money is one of the dirtiest things that we touch, so it's great to get rid of that. Although, if it reduces our access to disease, we might not build up antibodies. We might go the other way. So we'll see how that goes. We can still lend books to each other, perhaps. Will, your thoughts?
Yeah, so card issuers, these are divisions of companies like MasterCard and Visa, but there are other companies too. Some banks are card issuers. Card issuers stand to gain a great deal if people can real-time load, a smart debit card or a smart credit card with whatever asset they want, which is coming. I mean, Bitcoin is just one rail, but Ripple really looks like it might be, or possibly Stellar. Who knows? These are the things that banks will probably embrace, if they embrace crypto at all. They will probably embrace these things and use them to load funds onto cards, and this will be all full of KYC and all of that as well. But I think what you'll see is instant settlements will be a huge convenience that not only these institutions will really enjoy, but also, of course, the consumer. I mean, how much do we all not want to go, wait in line at banks and want to real-time load money when we need to? No more trips to the ATM. You just open your phone and boom, you go. I mean, that's going to be cool if that's the direction things go.
Victoria, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what to say about this one.
We'll see when it happens.
Yeah.
Bryce, what do you think?
A couple things. Credit cards have, believe it or not, some distinct advantages over crypto. I know that's really unpopular, but I had a conversation on Twitter with Ragnar. His last name begins with an A. Former global strategy officer for PayPal. He quit in a big kerfuffle on Twitter. He got drunk and called somebody a name. So, but I had a little, and I said, crypto could, could do everything that credit cards do, but do it faster and cheaper. And he says, yeah, but I don't get my SPG points. Okay, fair enough. However, crypto could make the cost of running that SPG network about 10% of what it actually is. So it's not exactly, a winner there. The other thing that credit cards do is, and nobody likes this either, there's this humongous, you know what, let me start that over. Bitcoiners, by and large, do not understand economics. I'm just going to go ahead and say that right now. And that lack of understanding has led to a lot of misperceptions about how easily things like credit cards are going to fall. And when you have things like bank interchange rates for credit and debt that are a part of the web of finance that create the money that the entire world spends, we're still in a minority. those systems still have to be chipped away at, and they live, and they exist deep within the economic structure of the society in which we live. And we are barely getting getting the message across to even retail banking. So when you talk about the money that moves between banks, we're not even anywhere near that yet. And until we get close to influencing that flow of funds, credit cards are going to be around for a long time.
Moving on, quite a lot is happening at the World Crypto Network. Try out hosting your own show with the Beta Show. Feel the rush with Bitcoin Rush and get the scoop from Midas Marty while enjoying your dark news. We've got it all at worldcryptonetwork.com, and all we're missing is you. Join the World Crypto Network today. Issue 3, PayPal makes their move for Bitcoin. The day after Apple's announcement, PayPal was very busy, releasing an unwatchable video with hundreds of faces quickly scrolling by that mentioned the word Bitcoin was just their warm-up. By lunchtime on Tuesday, the CEO of Braintree, PayPal's R&D futurist unit, has announced that PayPal will be using Bitcoin with NFC to compete with a yet unannounced Apple Pay. PayPal and Bitcoin, great partnership or the greatest partnership ever? Will Pangman.
Yeah, I mean, this is huge. This is really tapping into everyday use cases, usability. I think Bitcoin software builders, all kinds of companies, have a long way to go with UX UI before they can catch up to an integration like this could become, right? And you see this from some people, like Coinbase, for all of their issues, is very easy to use. Very, very easy to use for new people. And Zappo looks good. I haven't dug around too much in it, but looks good as a wallet. Very easy to use. Familiar to like the newer banking interfaces, which are kind of what people are familiar with, is what you need for kind of mass acceptance of this kind of technology. So there's other companies doing some cool things too. And I'm excited for Topeki to add to the tool set here too. I think we're gonna have a really nice UX UI to go along with what I'm talking about here. But this is still what's missing, along with the messaging. And Bryce was kind of talking about a little bit about that. I think maybe what correct me if I'm wrong, but some of what I think you're hinting at with the economics criticism of most Bitcoiners. And when I think of most Bitcoiners, I just go look through the comment section of the top 20 posts on our Bitcoin or something. And you're right. I mean, if you look at that, then it's pretty clear there's a weak, economics is a weakness of the majority of the people there. So, yeah, I guess what I'm saying is Bitcoin has to be easier for everyone to use so that something like this, where people could pay for Uber and Airbnb with Bitcoin because they use Braintree to process transactions, where people can buy things on eBay with Bitcoin and not just be like a Bitcoiner. Like they can go there, say, oh, Bitcoin's 5% cheaper. How do I buy Bitcoin? Boom. So that's what we're looking for from interfaces and kind of like on-ramps, off-ramps, which, again, we might not see any of this until the NYDFS and other regulations come out. Basically, in my opinion, like I know, the proposed regulations are very untenable. That's obvious. But the point is, as soon as there's an answer, people will move forward, and we can see some of this stuff roll out and actually get into consumers' hands, my mother's hands, right?
Victoria, your thoughts?
So I love this. I think this is really awesome. I think it was going to happen, obviously, just like Bitcoin being integrated with Uber and Airbnb is going to happen, obviously. So no, I'm really excited about this too. Once again, just like I said before, it keeps Bitcoin in the news, people asking about Bitcoin, people who aren't in it now, who are scared of it because of what it's typically tied to, which is like Silk Road, or they just don't understand, will now be talking about PayPal and Bitcoin because it seems more legitimate. So I'm excited for that.
Bryce, your thoughts?
I thought the video was really weird, like everybody else did. It was the message. You understand that PayPal is a wholly owned subsidiary of eBay. And a few months ago, Carla Can and Mark Andreessen had this Mount Olympus pissing contest over spinning PayPal off of eBay. And, of course, that didn't go through. And now you see this really strange video where they talk about the future of mobile payments and I am my money and all that kind of crazy stuff, and they kind of throw the word in Bitcoin in there once or twice. To me, that kind of seemed like floating a balloon, like flying a flag, just to see what the reaction was to PayPal saying the word Bitcoin and not being negative about it. And because there really was no message in that video. There was no, saying this is a major, multi-million to multi-billion-dollar company making this really crazy, not very well thought out sort of video, which mentions a Vanguard technology. And by the way, eBay stock price dumped on the Apple Pay announcement, but Bitcoin went up. So, I kind of thought that there might be a little bit in that dump on eBay. I think there might have been a little bit of negative sentiment left over from the whole Carl Icahn battle, because that was like a war almost over eBay.
See, now, I thought it would have been a really good idea if they spun PayPal off, because then eBay could just take Bitcoin directly and they wouldn't need PayPal and they'd look like geniuses. Obviously, anyone that invested with PayPal would get destroyed. But
now you see the larger picture that emerges, where people don't really like to talk about it very much, because remittance is the #1 hot topic right now on Wall Street and in global business, because everybody knows that mobile payments are increasing on a global scale at an almost exponential rate every month, not even annually, monthly. Increasing at an exponential rate, parabolic like the Bitcoin price, back last year. And there is so much infrastructure to be built that we're just rushing forward through it, and there's so much money to be made in building this infrastructure that battles over PayPal. I think we're going to see struggles like this. Well, there was some rumors I heard about BitPay having similar sorts of structure. Similar sort of struggles. So there's no, who knows where this is going to end up. And next year, the playing field, the Bitcoin remittance space, we could all be using PayPal.
It's very possible. Christoph, Atlas.
Yeah, what a completely terrible video. It had all the charm of a ransom note. It was pretty much unwatchable for most of the people that I heard from about it. Just very, very strange, and it didn't give me a sense of confidence of like, aha, PayPal and Bitcoin, they're married now. It was kind of like a dirty secret note passed between two cheating couples, or something like that. It was really quite odd. I'm glad to see that there may be some a significant player that's throwing their weight behind Bitcoin. And as usual, I'm a bit ambivalent about it. On one hand, I don't care terribly about the interface between the banking system and Bitcoin, but on the other hand, the more that it gets genuinely integrated, the more that potentially Bitcoin can kind of replace the existing banking system, and I think that ultimately is what's valuable.
Let's see. Exit question. When will PayPal realize that anyone can write a Bitcoin app with NFC to compete with them, offering lower or no fees? Will it be before or after they blow their advertising budget promoting Bitcoin? Will Pangman.
Well, this was the first thought that I had when I heard the Braintree and PayPal announcement and watched the video. I got excited. I tweeted and emailed it out a little bit, but then I started to think, there have been a proliferation in the last 4, 5, 6 months of Block Explorer API developer type Bitcoin companies. One of which just got acquired by Coinbase, that's Blocker. Another just integrated the Doge API, and that's Block.io. That's an exciting one. Gem is another one. They used to go by a different name. I can't recall what the name was at this point, but Gem has pivoted and called themselves Gem, and they're doing this now, and they were very much like the sizzle of TechCrunch Disrupt in San Francisco last week. And there's another one too, block cipher, which also allows you to like query the blockchain to see if your unconfirmed transaction will confirm quicker or get picked up quicker in the next block. So my first thought was that PayPal could really make money, to answer your question, Christoph, maybe, by being a Bitcoin Block Explorer API developer and, you know, provide software as a service for all of these applications that plug into PayPal to use essentially their wallet, you know, with US dollars in the banking system currently. That will all still exist for some amount of time, who knows, but if they're serious about integrating Bitcoin, I can't think of a better, more competitive play if they're serious about lowering fees and serious about mobile payments and all this kinds of stuff. If they're serious about embracing what this technology can do, I mean, there's been a lot of these Block Explorer companies, and I see more on the horizon. Maybe PayPal's the next.
Victoria, your thoughts?
I think they probably already realized this, that someone could compete with them eventually, but you're competing with PayPal, so you have to also build that brand, right? And, you know, market yourself as well.
If you're cheaper, you could just say we're the cheaper PayPal, and there's your brand right there.
Well, that's Bitcoin though.
There it is. Well, like just be Bitcoin.
But that's taking some time to do, right? So anyway, so the answer from my point of view would be they're gonna, you know, market this and blow their advertising budget. They already know what's going to happen, but I think that they see Bitcoin. They're starting to understand Bitcoin now. Bitcoin, capital B, not small b. And yeah, so. That's my thought.
We'll see how it goes. Bryce, your thoughts?
As I was sitting here, I just kind of flipped over to Twitter for a moment, and an image came across my feed that said, "Apple, keeping your money as safe as your most intimate moments." So just to harken back to that for a second, I think that there's an opportunity here building between Apple Pay and PayPal to be the first one to see who's going to give in to Bitcoin and get us to love them more than the other guy. And I think that by the end of the year, there's going to be a real courtship to see who can implement the best Bitcoin solutions in order to get our money from us more than the other guy.
I'm just fine with that. Christoph, Atlas.
I think Will's software as a service idea is pretty interesting. It's certainly true right now that one of the major, you know, services offered by PayPal is to these kind of web developers that are looking for a way to kind of interface between customers and in e-carts and all this kind of stuff. I've done programming with PayPal's API, and I can attest that, you know, they're sort of at the top of the game as far as this API type of stuff can go, and I could see them creating, you know, Bitcoin related APIs in the future and being competitive in that space. I think that would probably be a relatively small market compared to what PayPal is focusing on right now, but maybe that's what the remnants of PayPal look like in the future. I don't know.
Moving on, issue 4, Overstock and Coinbase go international. Bitcoin is spreading all over the globe thanks to the hard work of Bitcoin companies everywhere. Overstock once again fulfills their promise, while Coinbase continues to expand to fight the mighty BitPay. What country should they focus on? Where will the Bitcoin break out next? Victoria Van Eyck.
So I know Bryce will probably have some comments about this. I'm really excited about the remittance aspect, sending money back and forth. So I would like to see them focus more on places like India. But in terms of merchant services and wallets, I don't know. I think just continuing to focus on our markets. Like hey guys, come to Canada. We don't even have a team in Canada yet. Like BitPay, we can't even attach our bank account to Coinbase yet. So how about I say Canada? That's what I'm going to settle on.
Canada, the forgotten state. Are we joined by Blake Anderson? Are you with us, Blake?
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here. Thanks so much.
All right, go ahead. What do you think of Overstock and Coinbase going internationally?
I think it's really good news. I think that bringing as many people as possible into the Bitcoin space is really good because that's what Bitcoin is supposed to do. It's something that's all-inclusive. You don't need to have a special, you know, fancy hat or a shiny badge or, you know, special jurisdiction. It's just, you know, for everyone. So it's really great to see the utility of these different merchants and services spreading out everywhere. I think it's really good.
And it does help our argument when we say Bitcoin's international and these companies actually go international. That makes us look good.
Absolutely.
Bryce, your thoughts?
All right. I lost my. I was distracted for a moment. What was the topic?
We're talking about Coinbase and Overstock going international, and maybe what country they should focus on, or what should they do next.
I think they should proceed like as Victoria suggested throughout North America. Canada has absolutely terrible prices for goods and services in their country as a result of what they've done with their economy, and they pay up to 25 to 30% in some instances more than people 10 miles away south of the border in the United States pay for the exact same goods. Target, I think, was just introduced into Canada with these big promises of lowering prices and stopping this inequality, and that never happened because, of course, they couldn't without losing billions of dollars. Because the amount of money that these companies make and the arbitrage between the Canadian dollar and the U.S. dollar is almost more than the money that they make selling the goods and services in the first place. So when Bitcoin comes to Canada, it's going to have enormous and long-reaching effects throughout their economy. And I think that's why Canada has taken the stance that they have in being one of the first countries to actually put forth a bit of regulation as far as how this should be handled in commercial applications. For just that reason. Canada specifically, it'll have major impact. And we're not sure if it's going to be positive or negative.
Another vote for Bitcoin Canada. Christoph, your thoughts?
Well, I'm generally focused on the long game, which is that these borders, the restrictions on whether you can sell stuff here or there or on the other side of this line or on the other end of that beach, they don't really matter. I just finished watching a speech by Andreas that he put out sometime in this past year. It was really good, and he was talking about how, you know, when you have the internet of money, when money becomes borderless, things change drastically. And so right now we're talking a lot about how Bitcoin can interface with the existing system. Can it get this entry point here? Oh no, and we're playing whack-a-mole. You know, it gets shut down here, then it enters over there. Now Overstock, it's international, but then there's this ban in China. And really, what I think is it's important to keep in the big picture in mind, which is eventually where we're heading is a place in history where these distinctions really don't matter, where we will be able to trade freely with people all over the world, and that can't be stopped. And I think that's really powerful. And so when you see Overstock get into this space, it's sort of a prelude to this ultimate place that we will arrive, where they're acknowledging, look, we're taking Bitcoin, and if you want to buy something from us from the US and you want to flee the next day to Beijing, you can buy stuff from us there too, and we're perfectly fine with that, and no one can stop us.
Will Pangman.
So just going to carry along with the theme and use the geographical region known as Mexico, because, you know, this North America thing seems to be going pretty well. Mexico has a really successful new exchange, gaining more volume every day. MexBT looks pretty cool. I know they've been working on it for months, so the guys who are building it are serious. I know they've switched trading engines and before launching like 2 or 3 different times to make sure that they had a good engine. And yeah, so I think all the 7-Elevens or something like that down there take Bitcoin already. I mean, they have lots of Bitcoin penetration, and a Coinbase would do really well down in Mexico, I think.
And they have great food. Moving on to your questions and our answers. You still have a chance to get your question in. Doesn't look like we have any questions yet, which I'm very surprised by. Oh no, it's just the new Google. Things load slower now, so you have to be more patient, which I'm definitely not. Our first
That's not going to work for me.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I want it now. I want it now. But our first question is from Theo. What if Satoshi is an alien? I think this is a good question. We should go around the horn. Blake, Satoshi, an alien?
I'm not sure that he's not an alien, therefore aliens. So I think that that it's probably to do with the whole like Mars situation, where Mars used to have an atmosphere, then they got hit by a big asteroid, and they came over here and built a Merkaba with the pyramids, and then that's how life was seeded. And then Satoshi was probably frozen and then launched in some kind of a long elliptical orbit along with that planet, whatever it's called, that comes along every so often. And then that's probably what happened. Therefore, his email got hacked, and probably what happened.
Maybe the real question isn't, is Satoshi an alien? It's what color alien he is. Bryce, your thoughts?
I'm kind of leaning towards Blake's Nibiru theory. I think that every 6,000 years, another Bitcoin will be invented and will destroy the world.
Christoph?
Yeah, I don't have any evidence for aliens, but I think he would be kind of like the most realistic alien. Something that really sucks about sci-fi usually is that you get these stupid statist liberals that write this stuff. They're good authors, but their ability to think about what the future is going to be like is really fucking limited. So the aliens are always like, take us to your leader, when clearly a race that's advanced enough to travel the stars, travel faster than light, and open up wormholes and shit. Like, they would have outgrown the leader stuff by then, right? So it's kind of absurd. So hypothetically, if you were an alien race that wanted to nudge the human race into some kind of more productive direction, you wanted to speed up the rate of progress and get to the point where they can trade on a peaceful basis and not try to nuke the crap out of you. Yeah, why not invent a wonderful new censorship-resistant form of money that starts to chip away at the state? I think that would be a wonderful way of getting the ball rolling, and could be done in a subtle fashion. So perhaps.
For Christoph, the aliens are secretly libertarian. Will, what kind of alien do you think Satoshi is?
Okay, so this past week I had the awesome fortune of being in the Bay Area out west and hanging out with Bryce and Victoria. And I missed Tom. I'm pissed. I missed you, Tom. It was a busy couple days. But I met a couple weird people in California. Go figure. And this is coming from someone who just moved to Florida. So I know we're talking a lot about geographical regions with fictitious boundary lines. But what I'm getting at is one of these guys was saying the most mind-blowing stuff about Bitcoin. Very smart guy. I'm not going to say the name. But super smart guy, and like I was like, just like, this is one of the smarter people, and I've met a lot of smart people that week. I met Bryce for the first time that week. But anyway, 2 hours we talked, and like the third hour, somewhere in the middle, he told me that he was a time architect, and that he was from the year 2044.
Me too.
And he...
Wait, you saw John Titor in San Francisco and you didn't introduce me, you dick.
Yeah, it was a trip because this guy was lucid and, anyway. So does time travel exist, and are these things aliens? I don't know. Maybe only in California are they aliens.
Boy, things got complicated there. Time travel, too. Victoria, is Satoshi an alien?
Yeah, for sure. This is a great question. I don't know if you guys have seen, what's that series about aliens?
There's a lot of them.
Oh, I don't know. Anyway, I watched that like 20 of those episodes, and I'm just convinced that aliens have brought us like all these amazing technologies. So it makes sense.
Firefly?
No, it's like Ancient Aliens.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, with the guy with the crazy hair.
Yes.
History. Yeah. All right, moving on to our next question. This one's for Bryce. Last time Bryce was on, he offered to explain why Litecoin was in the situation it is in now, but everyone ignored him. Can Bryce now give an answer? So here you go, Bryce. You get the floor. Tell us about Litecoin.
Okay. So why is the Litecoin price going through the floor? The reason is because nobody is holding on to it. There's no... With Bitcoin, there was a certain amount of hope that Bitcoin would become what it has turned into, that it would fulfill its use case of changing the world and spreading blockchain technology and ASICs and blah, blah, blah. Litecoin, not so much. When the ASICs for Litecoin came out. Litecoin was originally launched with the features of GPU resistance that we wouldn't see ASICs for ages and ages and ages. But it turns out that Moore's law, doesn't care what Bitcoin Talk says, and in half the time that it took for Bitcoin ASICs to show up, script ASICs showed up. And earlier this year, you know what? We're just going to call it spade a spade. KNC mines with their own crap. We all know this. All ASIC mining companies mine with their own products before they ship them to customers. That's really how they make
testing. They have to test.
Right. Quote unquote burn-in testing. But of course, they give you the coins, that they mined with your equipment. But that's okay. We'll just skip past all that. So that being the case, people bought all these script ASICs, and they want to make money on them. They want to get that return on investment, and the only way to do that, unfortunately, is to dump the coins. And what this says from a market perspective is that there is no faith in the long-term viability of Litecoin. There's no reason for these miners that have put out these thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in investment in these ASICs to retain the Litecoins they're mining, because nobody thinks that anything good is going to come from it. So now you're sort of in this. Now Litecoin is sort of in this position where they're on the hook. I mean, the Litecoin community is on the hook for millions of dollars of investment up and down, the industry in supporting Litecoin it's an absolute dog. The price has done nothing but decline the entire year, and that is and you can see that the price goes down almost at an exact inversely proportional rate to the hash rate going up. So the more people mining Litecoin, the more people dumping Litecoin. And if someone is, at first I thought someone was kind of like quietly acquiring Litecoin. Boy, if they are, they're pissed off because they're already losing money. So I don't, I really don't know. I thought that there might be a Litecoin pump by the end of the year. I still think that that's a definite possibility because, quite frankly, if people aren't made happy with their miners like they were made happy with their Bitcoin miners, I don't think we're going to sell many script ASIC miners anymore because there's just no money in it. The Cambrian explosion of the alt market is over. We've all, in the markets, we've all pretty much agreed that this is just done. And script fell out of fashion, like around January or February when script N and X11, X13, and X99200, whatever the hell they have now. These GPU-resistant algos came on the scene, and script just became another also-ran. It's sort of wedged between Bitcoin's popularity and the desire for GPU farms that invested $1 million in these GPUs that they cannot resell, that they have to ROI, and most of them still haven't. So I don't know. The future for Litecoin isn't necessarily as definite as I thought it was 3 or 4 months ago. The market is not tightened up, and that's a bit concerning. And if it doesn't tighten up in the next 6 to 8 weeks, it could very well just drop through the floor and never come back.
Now, you mentioned that Litecoin's a real dog. What do you think about the Dogecoin merged mining with Litecoin? Could that save the day, the power of the Dogecoin?
I don't know if it can save the day. I think it's going to be better for Dogecoin than Litecoin. I think Dogecoin added a counterparty protocol, and I think that was absolutely brilliant. Of all of the counterparty options that have ever been released, the Doge Party is absolutely the most cost-effective. So if you want to utilize all of the functions of counterparty for smart contracts, for asset representations, Doge is actually the best choice because normal people can use it. And it puts that technology in the accessibility of regular people. Not to mention you get to burn Doge every time you do it, so that helps the long-term economics of that coin, which could desperately need it. A long time ago, I was very anti-counterparty because I didn't like that they destroyed coins. As a coin dev, we put a lot of time and effort into fine-tuning the economics of these networks so they will perform as we expect them to perform 5, 10, 15, 50, 500 years from now. So when you burn coins, you destroy that delicate balance of economics. We don't really know what Bitcoin is going to do in the long term because counterparty is on the blockchain. In this instance, I kind of agree with Jeff Garzik. Get it the F off. But in the case of Doge, excellent, excellent, excellent application. If anything, I think that might be the one technology that saves that coin in the long term.
This blends well with our next question, which is really more of a comment. Chad says, Bryce has a cool Doge. German Shepherds rock. So there you go, Bryce. A little compliment there.
Thank you.
And now the next question I'm not sure of. He says, I haven't heard of this. The first time hearing of it. SuperNet. What does everyone think? It raised 4,800 Bitcoin in a week and is a hell of a vision. So obviously 4,800 Bitcoin is incredible, and it's even more incredible that I've never heard of it. Have you guys heard of SuperNet, Victoria?
I just looked it up. No, I'm just reading about it now.
Yeah, okay. I'll go ahead and throw this out there. Peter Todd, if he were around, he's probably heard of it. It's a product of some of the folks that worked on an alternative blockchain implementation in the alt market. And what SuperNet was intended to do was, hold on a second. The SuperNet was intended to do was sort of create a counterparty-ish network based on some APIs that can be inserted into the code base of a coin wallet. And essentially, you know, the big dream was of a decentralized exchange. However, there's like serious issue with it. Well, number one, it's all pump and dump scam coins, basically. There is not a single legitimate coin that's offered to be a part of the SuperNet network. And if folks want to take issue with that, that's fine. I'm a professional, and I'm going to become a registered investment advisor. So if you don't like my advice, it just means I just picked on your favorite coin. But beyond that, I couldn't tell anybody to invest in it at all. It's a terrible idea. It's actually worse. It's probably the worst implementation of a distributed exchange format that I've ever seen to date.
So good news for Counterparty then.
Well, you know, Counterparty doesn't. Well, the thing that this does, this is not Counterparty doesn't really compete because Counterparty itself doesn't work across blockchains, and the entire thrust of SuperNet was that developers insert this into their wallet code, and it enabled these blockchains to talk to each other. However, this service has not been vetted by anybody yet. So now you're making this like, you know, gray ooze of blockchains that are just sort of like melding together with their value. And if one of these blockchains, and we have already seen that that crypto note has terrible, hideous design flaws that cause the blockchain to do terrible things. And so we're now going to integrate all these coins together. This is a recipe for disaster. I would not recommend that anyone invest in that network at all.
Can you talk some more about the issues that you have with crypto note design?
Crypto note? I think Peter Todd would probably be better at that to speak to that more than I would. I kind of backed out of that whole kerfuffle because it was just turning into a quagmire. And you know, God love him for taking some money and trying to sort that crap out. My issue with CryptoNote, it was intended to be a self-healing blockchain, which was great, like a la Peercoin but without centralized checkpointing. And what ended up happening was someone attacked the network, took advantage of a flaw in the mempool, and inserted a bunch of transactions that caused the blockchain to fork. Well, once the blockchain forked, there were two forks operating, and because of how CryptoNote was designed, suddenly anyone who tried to send a transaction to CryptoNote, it ended up in both forks. So I was making jokes like, you know, the most interesting man in the world. I don't always double spend, but when I do, it's on two forks at once. I have no idea how this is going to be resolved or how these blockchains are going to be, or even if they even have. I mean, at that point, I simply stopped looking at it because in order to win that consensus vote as to which blockchain is accurate, I have no idea how they're going to do that.
All right, moving on to the next question. It's loading. It may have been discussed catching up on episodes, but does anyone have an opinion on BitShares X? Elaborate on its concept, maybe? Will? No?
I was pointing to Bryce.
Yeah.
Poor Bryce. Back to Bryce again.
Bryce his own show.
You're getting the Andreas treatment
I
today.
have no idea how this is going to be resolved, or how these blocks.
Bryce is a time traveler. I just heard what he was saying a few moments ago said again. I think we have incontrovertible proof that he's an alien.
Sorry. Okay. So BitShares X. Props to yet another smart contract developer who managed to raise $15 million from the Bitcoin community. At this point, or not 15, excuse me, $5 million from the Bitcoin community. At this point, this kind of thing is not impressive. We all see the Bitcoin Days Destroyed goes up. This is not crowdfunding. These are whales using Bitcoins they've sat on for years in order to pay for this stuff. That being said, BitShares X is fundamentally flawed from an economic standpoint. I'm not the only person who said this. Several economists have also come out and said this, and it's very simple. The example that BitShares X uses is BitUSD, which is apparently supposed to be a one-to-one peg with the US dollar inside the BitShares X economy. However, if the price of BitShares X, all of the things inside of this big BitShares X bubble, like here's BitUSD inside the bubble, all of these things rise and fall based on the price of BitShares X. And in order for if BitShares X goes down, BitUSD has to go up in order to maintain that one-to-one peg. And there's no mechanism within BitShares to indicate what the rate of increase of assets should be added to BitUSD to make it the same as a dollar. Basically, long, complex economic nonsense. Long and the short of it is the price of everything inside BitShares is related to the price of one BitShare. And if that price goes down, the entire ecosystem goes down.
So, like, if I have...
And if you go to develop a product in the BitShares ecosystem, and you're going to spend $5 million developing this product, your competition can take $250,000 and drop the price of BitShares X so far that your product will absolutely lose money before you've even written a single line of code.
So is this the argument that I've heard of where you have, your bit, basically your pegged unit, and then you have a pegged unit worth of gasoline, and then that amount of gasoline will go up and down, and then people are like, well, how are you going to actually have the stored gasoline going up and down, and by what measure, and how much is it going to go up and down? Is that kind of a similar criticism to what you're talking about, the kind of layman's version of it?
Even beyond that, I mean, that there's two issues. Number one, yes, that issue. So if you have the price of gas, which fluctuates against the dollar, and then you have BitShares X, which fluctuates against Bitcoin, and Bitcoin fluctuates against the price of the dollar. So you have this translation of arbitrage between these three assets, and it's in that translation, BitShares X loses value because the most volatile asset in that chain is in fact BitShares X. There's no reason to use it. There's a higher risk of losing money in those transactions than actually just using the US dollar.
So it's like using a pogo stick to get better balance than your car.
Exactly. When really you should probably just go get a tune-up and get the damn thing fixed.
Very good. Moving on to our last question today. Tony P writes, and this is a little of the support for the NSA coin discussion we had earlier. He says, Bitcoin started out as the greatest social experiment in society to date. How can you be sure it's not just a test to see how much hashing unknown algorithm data they could outsource instead of spending money on supercomputers? This could be a brilliant move by the government. See, it's got you there, Bryce. I hadn't thought of that yet.
I mean, at any point along the progress of this technology, which certainly through 2009, 2010 was just, a speck. It's still kind of a speck, but back then it was just, a nothing. At any point it could have gained the attention or, the utility proposition for the powers that shouldn't be that they might do something like that, in my opinion.
Very well could be. And now, moving on to predictions or story of the week. I'm sure everyone is prepared with a prediction or a story of the week. That's why we're going to Blake Anderson first. Are you ready, Blake?
Well, My prediction is that having new payment systems that come out and try to mimic the Bitcoin token system are going to be hacked eventually, because what you have is you have fungibility. Tokens are fungible. One's just as good as the other, but the blockchain, the hash rate, that is not a fungible thing. Like, so things that are saying, well, our network and payment system is fungible with the Bitcoin system. It's like, no, it's not. That's like saying, we have, Jerry Rice in his prime, and we're just going to, substitute him with another player, and it's going to be just as good. We're going to, make football contracts, and that's asinine. So I think that, some of these new technologies that are coming out and saying that they're just as good as Bitcoin, or that their token system is really awesome, be skeptical. My prediction is that they're going to be hacked, and that your iCloud nude photos are going to be gone.
I hadn't even thought of hacking Apple Pay yet. I could buy anything I want. Woohoo! Bryce Wiener, your prediction or story of the week?
Story of the week. Spent 3 days in San Francisco with Victoria and Will and Devin Reed, the CEO of BlockTech, and a bunch of other, probably some of the most brilliant folks I've met in my life. And boy, what a fantastic set of conversations we had this past week. It was very eye-opening on a lot of fronts, and I think that going forward, I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that came out of this past week that most people won't even realize.
Christoph, Atlas, your prediction?
I have a story of the week. So I just published a paper on Darkcoin's DarkSend technology, and I think it's pretty approachable. I tried to write it so that it's not just like a super academic, but your average crypto enthusiast can probably work their way through it. It has some nice diagrams in it and stuff like that. So if you're interested in that, check it out. And the Darkcoin developer Evan Duffield did post like a response blog post to that, and seems to be on top of understanding all of the weaknesses and whatnot that I identified in the paper. And I think they have a pretty good kind of roadmap moving forward for improving Darkcoin and improving the level of privacy for it. I think that also this analysis will be helpful for just understanding CoinJoin implementations in the future, because Darkcoin is primarily kind of a complex implementation of the CoinJoin protocol proposed by Gregory Maxwell and others. So check that out if you're interested. You can find a link to it on my blog, which is at blog.anonymousbitcoinbook.com.
Christoph, can I harass you for a second and just ask you, how does the CoinJoin and things like that compare to like a teleport technology that's being talked about a little bit with, what is it, Bitcoin Dark?
So I don't fully understand Bitcoin Dark's technology yet, but it's just at a high level, it's kind of like an off-chain approach to privacy. So you're going to be able to send your coins to other people, but it won't be written to the blockchain right away, and that's one of the things that helps it be anonymous for Bitcoin Dark. Bitcoin Dark would also potentially be compatible with other cryptocurrencies, which is interesting. I suspect that it may be less robust than something like CoinJoin, but I'll hold off my judgment on that until I fully wrap my head around it. Whereas something like Darkcoin, everything's happening on the blockchain. You're still getting all the security of the blockchain and all that good stuff, but it's trying to
except for the accountability. I mean, CoinJoin ruins the accountability of the blockchain.
Oh, sure, yeah, which is it's an optional thing, right? But you get to, if you want to, have that privacy, and I think that's for any cryptocurrency. In order for it to be useful as money, unless it has kind of like a niche use, I think it absolutely has to have that privacy option. To me, otherwise, it's just not that useful. I think it will be shut down by governments around the world, and it's not going to be good. So Darkcoin, I'm not going to say that it's like the pinnacle technology for privacy. It's competing with a whole lot of other potential designs, and it's really gratifying to see these altcoins working on this stuff, because Bitcoin has done jack shit when it comes to privacy in the last year. It's been terrible. We have Dark Wallet.
Of $50,000 to make Dark Wallet, which has been done like 6 or 7 times over in the alt market already for free, but sorry, I didn't mean.
Well, not exactly free, but yeah. Anyway, so the dark wallet people. I'm looking forward to dark wallets. I'm sure it will be useful in the Bitcoin space. The $50,000 that they raised was not very much for several developers. Those guys eat out of cans and live in homeless shelters or whatever it is that they do. But so
They
I don't have
squat
any,
for
I don't have any
ideological
criticisms
purposes.
of dark wallet. And ultimately, I want to see a lot of people coming up with innovative ideas, competing with each other to move the ball forward on this, because we absolutely cannot count on, for example, the programmers that are being funded by the Bitcoin Foundation to do this work for us. They're not interested. It's not a priority for them. And with the exception of Peter Todd, who is helping some of these different projects out, which is great. But this is not code that's being written to Bitcoin Core code right now. It's not going to happen in the near future. And so I think that this activity in the altcoin space, regardless of what your opinion is of altcoins in general, is very, very important.
Yeah, it's a good test net research space. I definitely agree with that sentiment.
Will Pangman, your prediction or story of the week?
So I kind of want to highlight this interesting development out of Bryce's company. A friend of mine, Ryan Taylor's working on it as well. It's called Alexandria. Maybe that's not the complete name, forgive me, Bryce, but it's basically kind of what I alluded to earlier. I've really been fascinated by kind of these social, the psychosocial implications of what Bitcoin can teach, individuals and groups. And one thing is, like I was alluding to earlier, it's this history timeline that's stronger the older it gets. That's wonderful. And we have the ability now with this tool to record all kinds of information. I mean, the proof of existence and notary and all these kinds of things. But what about library? So this is something that's happening. And the story of the week that I want to highlight, and I'll put the link in the chat, and please post it to the show notes. I'm sure you will, Tom. But it's a CNBC story. The headline is "The Death of the Classroom as We Know It." And so the only thing missing from this story is really, it talks about crowdfunding and some of the startups that are disrupting education, and thank you to them. The only thing missing is talk of how the blockchain would apply to this kind of a disruption, and I'm interested in working on projects like this. I have talked with some interesting historians who I really want to put in touch with you, Bryce, and Ryan, and whoever else on your team's working on this project, and help however I might be able to. But this is interesting, right? So the death of the classroom. We all know that you can, with the internet, learn so much stuff for free. I mean, there was a comment earlier about what you can acquire for free, compared to what people might raise money for or go into debt for. So this is huge. I want to see more of this. I'm really grateful that there are academics who are kind of rebelling or bucking the system. They're going off and becoming entrepreneurs, which is completely awesome. And they're creating curriculum that's free, open source, all these things, like, so much educational material out there. I read a statistic, if you listen to like 120 hours of a podcast on a particular topic, any set of podcasts on one particular topic, that's the equivalent of a PhD degree in that subject, essentially. So, of course, you have to, use critical thinking and make sure that you're vetting your sources and you're looking for primary source material wherever possible. This is where a project like Bryce and BlockTech are doing is super exciting, because primary source material will be easy at access forever, all time, which is great. So, yeah, I get super thrilled about this stuff, because I don't plan on, I regret spending the sum of money I spent to go to school. I loved being there and my friends and the extracurricular activities, but everything about the classes was completely unfulfilling and unstimulating, and I've learned so much more in the past 2 years than the prior 7 since college, and I learned a whole lot more in the prior 7 than I did in the previous 12 of school. So it's this is the way we need to move in the future, and blockchain technology is a huge part of it.
Victoria, your prediction or story of the week?
A couple of thoughts. So story of the week for me is clearly this PayPal Braintree thing and Apple Pay. I mean, that's hands down for me the biggest thing that happened this week. Will, I actually met someone so I'm in California. I got to go see a couple new startups out of Boost VC in San Mateo. That's really cool. Block Cypher's there. Definitely check them out. But Will, there's a startup there They just started, but you're going to be interested if you're interested in this like school curriculum style thing. He's using blockchain technology to work on that, but I'll hook you up with him too. He's on Twitter, but I'll send you an email. Prediction is that this PayPal Apple thing, getting people using money on their phones, is going to pave the way for Bitcoin. We're going to see Uber, Airbnb jumping on board soon, lots more businesses getting interested, and yeah, that's my prediction.
Excellent. Sounds a lot like my prediction, which is the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Apple may seem like a competitor, but they're doing the hard work of getting rid of plastic credit cards with the help of their mighty marketing department. They'll create a world where the only way to pay is Apple versus PayPal. And before long, people will learn that you can use Bitcoin without PayPal, and you don't have to pay any fees. Uh-oh, PayPal. But we're out of time. Until next time, bye-bye.